On today's show, we will explore the new copyright regulations the EU is implementing regarding AI. We will also discuss how these changes impact companies and how business can protect themselves from copyright issues. I'm Daniel.
I'm Mateus.
And this is the Human AI Experience. We'll be right back.
So Daniel, lately I was reading some articles and searching about how EU is dealing and trying to regulate AI. So I was reading an article from MIT, and they have 5 points of discussion that I think we can actually discuss here and understand a little bit more how EU is regulating the AI use. So the first point is that they are trying to binding rules on transparency and ethics. So nowadays the companies, they can change the policies, every time that they want. So you haven't seen, for example, a lot of emails or even in the app, sometimes it popped up like something saying we updated our politics, and then you need to read it, everything, to understand what they change, and sometimes it's not clear what they change and something like that. So they want to make sure that these changes make sense and they are clearly, in which terms they are changing and why they are changing. So the companies need to notify people when interacting with chatbots or biometric categorization or emotion recognition systems. So I think they want to avoid a little bit the same that happens in China, for example, where they analyze everything that you do. So they will require a label that will make it clear when it's deepfake or AI generated content. I don't know how they're going to do that, because I believe it's going to be super hard to identify this. And maybe this kind of stamps, they might be possible to fake it,
So Meta is actually trying to do that already. They are trying to add this label called made with AI, but they are already misunderstanding and placing that on actual images that were not generated by AI. So I don't know how their process, what they're doing, and how they are trying to identify that, but it's clearly not working.
Yeah.
So
yeah, YouTube, they're using, when you upload the video, they ask you some questions, and one of the questions are if it's generated by AI, if it was edited, anything with AI, and stuff like that. So probably they're trying to protect themselves. So when you declare, you are saying that that's real. I'm doing that and that and that, and the same as in other platforms. I saw, for example, Amazon. When you upload a book, an ebook, it asks you if anything of that book is generated by AI, So you need to self-declare, for example, if you use images from Midjourney or from Stable Diffusion, you need to say it clearly that you are using AI to do it.
So basically those companies are transferring their responsibility to the user, like they always do. So if you don't declare yourself, then you are the one to blame because you were lying. But that's basically what the EU regulation wants to avoid, right? Because they are responsible. This data is in their platform, in their servers, so they need to be responsible for that. So I guess that's the change.
Yeah, I believe that's the change. And then I totally agree with you. They're responsible too, But of course, it's hard to understand. For example, YouTube, there's, I don't know if it's a month of time that it's uploaded every hour or something like that. If you take the amount of hours in a month, it's uploaded every hour on YouTube. So I do believe that it's quite hard to understand and to check all of this data. So it's a challenge for the companies, I believe.
But if you don't have regulation, then they can get away with it, right? So
yeah,
it is hard, but they created that problem themselves, right? So I do believe it's good to have regulation. So in order to operate in the EU, they will have to adapt, and they will have to have more content moderators, right? So they will have to ramp up their business to moderate this content. But the big question is it's not that easy to identify if it was generated by AI. The AI is getting better and better.
Yeah.
So how they're gonna do it? Good question.
Yeah. Yeah, I always think about this Will Smith video. As soon as the AI generated models were launched, there was a video of Will Smith eating some pasta. It was so bad. It was so weird, and you could see that Will Smith was so bad that there was something weird happening in that video. But then suddenly, now it's becoming so real. I saw some videos from Sora and from other AI generated videos that they're so real that it's even hard to see and perceive that it's AI generated video, you know. So the tendency is that in a couple of years it's gonna be so hard that it may be impossible, you know, to check that.
In a matter of a year, it completely changed, right? So this Will Smith video with the pasta is from last year, and then this year is already like that is already crap considered to the level of content that we're seeing nowadays.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's crazy. It's evolving super fast. So if that happened in a year, I can only imagine what's gonna be next year.
So the second point is the companies will need to share where the data comes from, how the company trained that model. So for the most powerful model, there are some extra requirements too. So the tech companies, they will have to share how secure and energy efficient their models are. So there's two regulations I think that are super important. The first one, it's obviously the most controversial thing, because a lot of AIs, they don't show the sources of the data they are using to train the models. So the CEO of OpenAI, he never tell from which sources he used to train ChatGPT. So
you know why?
Yeah, I imagine why.
Yeah, because I think I've been hearing and seeing people discussing this lack of transparency, and then I think it boils down to the investors. So basically, if there was a lot of roadblocks or obstacles or a lot of money to pay for the copyright material, it would be too expensive for investors to invest in this company. So they are basically playing the dumb card now. So they are not disclosing because they're training a lot of copyrighted material. Yeah. That's the biggest problem with AI today. And then we're seeing slowly a lot of lawsuits, especially in the US. The New York Times sued OpenAI because they figured it out that they train using all public data of the New York Times, all the news.
Maybe not only public information, but sometimes they have paywalls and everything, and you can unblock paywalls with, I don't know how they do that. But it's possible.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy. Yeah, to bypass the paywalls, right? But we're slowly seeing a lot of lawsuits from creatives, from news media, and now the most recent was the biggest record labels are suing two of AI music startup companies, Udio and Suno, as far as I recall, because they could clearly see that they've been trained with their catalog of artists that are copyrighted. And historically, these record labels always win their lawsuits against with copyright issues. So let's see how it's going to play out with AI, because it's quite interesting. And then I think those companies, they shouldn't get away with using copyrighted material, right? They need to pay people for using this content. So I'm gonna keep an eye on how this is gonna evolve.
Yeah, but I think that relates with art too. So if you think Midjourney used a lot of art too, so but it creates something totally different. So I'm playing here the devil's advocate. yeah, and advocating for the devil, but let's say if you think about it, all the AI tools they are created with some database, you know, and they're creating something new, even though they are copying from the source and change it. So if you're charging from one art spectrum, you need to charge the other one. So if you're charging music companies or they need to you need to charge artists too, you know. So that's a big issue. I believe that's not gonna be the barrier that will make AI not succeed, you know. So maybe what we are gonna see is like we'll just ignore that from now to the
Well,
future.
it is already changing, right? Like I know OpenAI made a deal with I think Reddit to train on their data, for example. So there are some deals being done for training data where they go to some publications and stuff. The problem is what they have done in the past, right? So I mean, if these things are completely, if copyright gets completely ignored because of AI in order to not unblock innovation, then it completely undermines the value of copyright in general, right? So I think then there's another discussion if what is copyright, if it's if these companies are capitalizing on. I know you have more things to cover, but it's it's an interesting reflection. Yep.
Yeah, maybe we can do an episode only talking about this database. Maybe we can search more about it. So the EU is launching the first AI policy, you know, and then that's really nice. It's nice that they are ahead of other countries and other nations. So they are creating a council of experts to see and analyze the risks of AI, and they're classifying and testing the models. And another things that they will regulate is that people can actually launch complaints about AI systems and receive explanations about what is wrong or what can be done or something, or any kind of complaints need to be clarified.
It makes sense to be able to complain because these AI models, at least in their current state, they hallucinate a lot. They tell a bunch of lies. So depending on the importance of the information that you're asking, you should double check that. So if you're trying to get some historical information or some scientific information, which maybe you shouldn't ask ChatGPT that. Because of the training biases, it might give you, the wrong answer. So it makes sense that you'll be able to complain, or if the answers are not accurate.
Yeah, another thing I was thinking about it, like if for instance I complain that my material is there. So for example, if I'm an artist and I have my own style, can I complain? Okay, I want you should do not take that in consideration. What are the next steps? What they're gonna do? Like how the companies will react to that?
Yeah, similar to what happens today. If somebody posted a photo of you or a photo of or something that belongs to you online, you can ask the company to take it down, right?
Yeah.
And they usually do it because, again, copyright,
Yeah.
rights of image use, that's a big thing. So yeah, it's good that they're like coming up with this or demanding this for AI companies as well.
Yeah. So the fourth item that the MIT highlights is that national security always wins, let's say. So that's the title. So they are actually regulating the biometric categorization system. So they're untargeting scrapping of facial images from the internet or CCTV cameras to create facial recognition databases like Clearview AI, emotion recognition at work or in schools, social scoring like it happens in China, and AI systems that can manipulate the human behavior, and AI that is used to exploit people's vulnerabilities, which is really interesting because if you can read what the person is feeling, you can manipulate the person. You know? So that's important to have it.
It's not very clear to me. This is they are forbidding the AI for training on this data, right? Is that correct?
That's a really good question.
Because I think there's something missing here. Like,
I think what they did was they do not allow companies to work with this kind of tools. You know, yeah, I think they want to avoid this kind of scoring. You know, like that happens in China, because it's maybe it can create a segregation in the for people. You know, so if you are not in that level of score, you are segregated from buying stuff, you know, from get credit from the banks and stuff. Mm-hmm. And the reasons sometimes are not that clear as they should. So I think they're trying to avoid this risk of losing control and people kind of lose their rights, you know, as free as you are. So that's what I envision, what I understood of this. So predictive policing is also banned unless it is used with clear human assessment of objective facts, which basically do not simply leave the decision on going after a certain individual in a criminal investigation only because the algorithm says so. So this reminds me a lot Minority Report. So what they are trying to avoid, I think, is like, you know, when the person is likely to do a crime, for example, a guy's coming towards some person like acting weirdly, the AI will say like he's gonna commit a crime, but is he committing or not? So this, I think, this prediction, it's kind of unfair. You know, if you don't do it, why are you gonna be charged of it? And I think that's the problem with like in Minority Report is exactly what happened. So that's interesting that they put that law on the regulation.
Huge ethical implications, right? Yeah, you shouldn't trust the algorithm to incriminate somebody, right?
Yeah.
Totally fair.
What MIT highlighted is that France is against this because I think they're already using some predictive or some CCTVs to see and fight crime and terrorism on the streets. You know? So they were clearly against that. But now they're in election, so they're changing the president. I don't know what's gonna happen next, you know, with France in these terms. The fifth and the last item that they highlighted is just that companies will need to address where they're taking the sources to train the models from. So if it's a public domain or a private source. And I think it kind of relates to the second item that we discussed a lot about where the copyright coming from, where the source is. So that's really interesting how they are thinking about this.
Yeah, quite interesting. AI and copyright is a big discussion. So quite interesting that at least the European Union is doing something about it, because this needs to be regulated. I do believe we need some sort of regulation. And every time I see somebody talking about regulation in general, they compare with the aviation industry, that in, I don't know, 50, 60 years ago, there was a lot of airplane accidents because the industry wasn't regulated enough. So then a lot of regulation bodies started regulating the aviation industry, and then nowadays it's very rare to have an accident. So when we're talking about security, it's really important to regulate. But tech industries are unregulated in general. And in the last couple of years, the EU has been acting a lot to regulate these companies, at least in the European Union. So it's interesting to see they taking the initiative to do it with AI before everybody does it.
Yeah, but it's hard for you to regulate something that doesn't exist. You know, that's why tech industries sometimes they take the things to the limit. You know. because, for example, AI doesn't exist like a couple of years ago. Like talking about this kind of generative AIs, you know. They didn't exist the way that we know, and they didn't. I believe even the tech companies, they didn't predict that it will become so big and it will spread so much like it's just doing right now. Because now what we are facing is like, of course you need to train AI somehow, and then at the moment they were probably using data without like thinking about businesses. So you need to train a new technology. So you put any information that you can gather, and then at some point this becomes so big and everyone is using it, and then you can face these boundaries of copyright, you know. So I believe that's the problem that we are facing right now. Like the companies weren't that much prepared for this moment, you know. They maybe used to train, but then they lose control, let's say. And what I have been listening to some podcasts and reading is that they actually don't know how AI works anymore, you know. So sometimes AI comes with a different result than they expected, because it's the way that it's creating and connecting ideas, it's unknown, you know. We don't know. We just put the parameters, and then it comes out with something. Yeah, no, I agree with you. We need to regulate and understand what's happening, and how can we work from now on. I have like two thoughts about that. The first one is that, okay, if we regulate it so much, maybe they will need to take out a lot of the data that they already have. So maybe the power tools that we have now, they're gonna be less powerful from now on. And at the same time, I understand that artists and everyone who created these pieces, they need to be recognized, and we still have the right of having something, you know.
AI and copyright issues are the talk of the moment. So I guess we're going to see that evolving in different ways. Let's just keep an eye on, and then we keep talking about it when we know more. Thanks for bringing this up. It was really interesting hearing about the evolution, or how the EU is looking into this, into AI and copyright. We're going to keep an eye on, and we're going to keep discussing this on the podcast. But it's time to wrap up. The episode, I think, is getting a little bit too long, but it was worth it. If you're interested in how AI is evolving and how you can introduce it in your life or your work, subscribe to the podcast in your favorite podcast service and follow us for more. Let's explore AI together. If you have any questions for us, you can reach out to us at hello@humanAIXP.com or connect with us on Instagram. Thanks for listening. See you next week.